What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode review for Vinland Saga Season 2. This is episode 18, and with me, as always, I have Blue Spade.
Yeah, I mean, things are definitely escalating after. Well, you could say it's the fallout, not only just from the last episode, but now they're just really starting to build up with the confrontation against Canute now.
Yeah. We kind of start the episode with Canute, of course, sailing to Ketil's farm, and it's kind of further setting up for the conflict between Canute and Ketil's men. But this episode mainly revolves around Ketil. Well, I would say Arnheid, and just the fallout from what she did in the last episode.
Yeah, overall, she kind of does bear some responsibility for allowing her husband to kill several of Snake's men. I mean, he did technically kill a couple earlier, but her letting him go, caused maybe a few more deaths in the process. So yeah, after he died in Arnheid's arms, she was of course apprehended by Snake's men, in which she was pretty much tied up to the stables, and Thorfinn and Einar are both tied up back at Snake's Snake's hangout area.
Yeah, and of course we have a conversation between Thorfinn and Einar where Thorfinn wonders if there was another way he could have handled things, because he sort of regrets fighting Snake. He really didn't want to have to fight Snake. And he wonders if there was another, a less violent way I guess a less violent way that things could have gone down. But honestly, I don't really think it could have gone any other way if you think about it. I feel like a lot of that was pretty much out of Thorfinn's control. I mean, of course, he did volunteer to help. The only other option would be he could have stood aside and let things happen. But he decided to help them out, which, of course, Snake was not going to be talked down from what he was going to do. So I don't really see any non-violent alternative there.
He did the right thing, just basically trying to fend off Snake, without any form of weaponry of sorts. But yeah, Einar argues to Thorfinn that it's an unavoidable situation, and he pretty much needed to use you could say violence as a last resort. I mean, it was just mainly Thorfinn, defending himself. He wasn't really trying to kill Snake in the first place.
Yeah, and of course Thorfinn says that nobody really deserves to be hurt, and it's kind of his whole ideology now that he doesn't want to use violence if he doesn't have to, and he doesn't feel that people anybody should hurt each other, which is understandable, from where he's coming from. But it is a questionable ideology, because you could say there are genuinely evil people in the world that probably do deserve to be hurt. And I wouldn't say I necessarily completely agree with Thorfinn. I feel like Einar has the more reasonable view of the world, where he says that sometimes violence is necessary.
Yeah, it's more or less unavoidable. I mean, Thorfinn really has to realize this, because it's not his ideology is not as black and white as as he thinks it is, or what he believes it to be. It's not the way the world works. I mean, regardless, Snake,
especially if you're talking about a Viking society where that is pretty much the norm.
Yeah, and considering at the time there are no really real laws to really prevent much of this from happening. I mean, it's not, like I said, it's not something that Thorfinn can really avoid for most of the time. He needs to take action in order to either defend himself or defend other people he cares about.
Right.
Yeah, but anyway, so we do get Ketil coming back to the farm alongside Thorgil and Olmar, and of course he was still technically in the barrel until Thorgil decides to toss him back into shore, and we just see Kettle just basically just desponded over what happened over at a what was it in? It wasn't Denmark, was it, or was it? I can't remember what thing it was.
Uh, I it might have been, but yeah, it was over in Canute's territory. But yeah, he's basically been, he's completely just, yeah, like you said, despondent. He's just, he's kind of a broken mess right now, where he's, I guess he feels like everything's out of his control and that, things are going away he didn't anticipate. And as we know before, he's pretty much sought comfort in Arnheid whenever things weren't really going well. We saw that in a previous episode where he had to make a tough decision whether or not to execute these two slaves that were stealing from him, or just to punish them in some way. And it really just made him so, I guess, behind the scenes he's became just couldn't deal with, I guess, what he had to end up doing.
Yeah, it's most of the time he's just emotionally unsettled during, I guess, during like the these certain moments in which he's not comfortable dealing with himself. So
yeah, so of course, like the first thing he looks for when he gets back is of course Arnheid, because of just how he has, I guess he has no real other way to cope with how he's feeling at the moment.
And of course he gets back to his home to try to look for her, but as of course she's not there at the time, because she's currently tied up at the stables, and he gets told by his wife. Now, I'm just curious about this. It's like, I'm not really sure whether or not his wife really even knows that he's having an affair with her.
I feel like she does. If you just look at their interaction, I think she clearly must know. I mean, especially considering how long this must have been going on for. I'm pretty sure his wife probably knows. And I think it's also obvious he's not really attracted to his wife as well. I mean, why is he not, seeking comfort in his wife? Instead, he's seeking comfort with Arnheid, who is a slave girl. His wife must have found that suspicious, and I'm pretty sure she must have found out about this. Like, she probably knows. I mean, especially considering that's the first thing he's looking for when he comes back.
But of course, his wife tells him pretty much the entire gist of the situation of what happened with not only Arnheid, but also Thorfinn and Einar as well. And this completely, like, he just dives further into, I don't know, into the deep end, I guess, once he finds out about this.
Well, he's completely, like, just incredulous. Like, he can't believe what he was hearing, and I think it just sends him into a rage.
And
that we've never really seen from him.
And of course, he immediately goes over to the stables where Arnheid is kept in. And you could say
there's also that little interaction earlier between Arnheid and the and one of the I guess one of the guests, where he was saying, like, it's good that you weren't captured by us, because let's just say things would be much worse. And he was actually about to do something to her before Ketil kind of
and of course the guest of course runs away after Ketil arrives, but Ketil, he's just ready to lay waste to her after what just happened.
It's a pretty hard scene to watch too, because not only because she's being beaten brutally, but also because we know she's pregnant, which he tries to tell him, but he's not really convinced that the child's actually his, because of course at this point he's not really going to believe her. So he just proceeds to just mercilessly beat her until he's actually stopped by Snake, surprisingly enough. Which Snake says, you might not want to continue because you're going to kill her. Which is kind of a little bit ironic, I guess, because as we find out later, she's in pretty bad shape, and it looks like she's probably not going to make it. So it's like she's probably, I don't know, like she could potentially succumb to her wounds and just
die, I mean,
die,
Hadar even points this out, that how bad she's physically hurt. And of course Einar and Thorfinn also find out about this, and they're also in shock as to what really happened. And and of course, we also forgot to mention that Leaf is also there too, but it's not really the kind of reunion that we
Yeah.
were expecting. The first time we see them on screen for the first time.
Yeah, I mean they really don't even greet each other at all. They just, because of what's going on, they're really too preoccupied just on the guys with the current situation with
Yeah,
Arnheid.
and of course they also overhear that there's also an upcoming battle, but they don't know who's coming to their shores to attack the farmland. But I would assume that they'll eventually learn this later. But it's possible that they might end up leaving before the battle even starts. And of course we see Ketil again,
Yeah.
heading back to his house or ranch, pretty much just determined to just kill anybody in his way after everything that's happened, and as well as just going to the lengths of wanting to kill Canute after what's happened.
Yeah, it just feels more like he wants to take his anger out on somebody because of what happened with Arnheid. And I guess this is pretty much the perfect opportunity for him to do so. And I'm kind of wondering if all those exaggerated legends about him though are going to end up proving to be any true at all. If we, considering we're, I guess, going to see him in combat. So
Kettle's the one
I don't
who
know.
admitted to Arnheid that all the stories about him were a lie, unless if he's just telling himself
Yeah.
that it's a lie.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because if he, I don't know if he could really hold his own in a fight, if everything was just a lie. So I don't know. I feel like he could potentially just get killed on the battlefield. Or
I
something.
could just assume right now that he's just more in. Yeah, his current mindset is just in a rage right now. I don't think he would really even care that whether or not he would really die in the upcoming battle.
Yeah, well, most likely. But yeah, this was another really good episode. It's doing, from what I understand, a pretty good job of adapting the manga, but especially since I'd read the manga, I already knew what was coming in this episode. And it's about as hard to watch as it was to read when I first read this. But yeah, you just can't help but feel like just terrible for Arnheid because it's like, yeah, she did bring, I guess you could argue she brought some of this on herself, but at the same time, you can kind of understand where she was coming from and what kind of position she was in as to why she ended up, why she at least tried to help Gardar. She was just hoping that she could potentially get out and actually have a better life because, the alternative is staying on the farm and being, basically being a slave to Ketil and trying to, and her just, comforting Ketil when she clearly has no real attachments or feelings for him in the first place. So it's like, like you can kind of see where she was coming from, but yeah, it's just she just kind of got dealt a bad hand. It seems like she's just things did not
considering
work out for
that
her.
the whole situation got complicated when her husband just suddenly just appears out of nowhere one day, and then it just like everything good that was happening between her, Thorfinn, Einar, and everybody else, it was going well until this whole situation just came crashing down, simultaneously with the whole thing with Canute.
Yeah.
Right now. So it's, we'll definitely get to see, the real fallout of this whole mess by the next episode.
I guess you could argue too, like when you think about it, like that maybe when she was a slave, she sort of resigned herself to, this is what my life is now, and there's no opportunity for it to ever go back to the way it was. But when Gardar showed up again, it sort of showed her that like my life could go back to how it was before, and it sort of like showed her that I could potentially get out of this. I don't have to live like this forever. And I feel like that's really the justification as to why she made her the choices she did. But yeah, I feel like had Gardar not showed up, most likely things would have probably continued as they were. But I mean, she wouldn't really have been happy with that life. But I guess that's all she really would know at that point. She wouldn't have known anything better, or well, she would have already given up on going back to what her
Yeah,
role
I
was.
mean, one would have to imagine had Gardar not got himself involved in the first place, with the situation with Ketil be a little bit different. Um, but it's hard to tell at this point because
Yeah.
you know it would have been unavoidable regardless because of Canute and his entire army coming over to the farmland.
Yeah, that's true. Canute still was going to invade the farm, so I guess one way or another, things would not have stayed the same. Um, but yeah, I don't really have much else to say about the episode, though. I don't know if you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
have
it was still hard to
anything else
watch.
say about it.
Arnheid just getting brutally beaten by Ketil that way. I mean, it's not something that I don't know. I don't think it was. It's hard for me to really believe that something like that is really warranted. Not to mention the fact that she was, really pregnant with Ketil's child at the time. But it's
Well, yeah, but I mean, Kettle's not thinking
no.
rationally at all, so I mean, and also this episode kind of shows, like, because we've kind of been led to believe that, like, maybe Ketil is not so bad of a person, but this episode really confirms that he's he if driven far enough, he could do some pretty terrible things. And he's not as good of a person as we might have once believed. He is, despite him being like a slave owner and
I
all
mean,
that.
we did initially believe that he could have been a good person, but it's not. It's. I don't think it's really his fault. I think it's just, different factors, that was out of his control. I think partially is because his son Olmar was the one responsible who got him into the situation with Canute invading in the first place.
I think it's more so that it just reveals him for who he really
Yeah.
is, if you think about it. That it's just his real personality got brought to the surface, and things he was trying to keep hidden from everybody else, like his dependence on Arnheid, was just kind of brought to the forefront because of his desperation and him using other coping
I
mechanisms.
think it also has more to do with his past, with his and the situation with his father Sverkel. About the situation, I guess the thing that happened with Ketil's old girlfriend at the time, before she was arranged to marriage and then killed shortly afterward during a Viking attack, which I guess also played a factor to Ketil's psyche at the time. So it was possible, I guess. You could say, like, the Ketil we saw at the beginning of this season was trying to turn a new leaf after everything that's happened to him. But I guess, with all the things just crashing down on him all at once, it really brought his old violent self back.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, guys, that all being said, until next time, we will see you all later.